All right, welcome to Table Talk here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world. 12 years strong. We got our good friend coming to you from Fox Sports Philly's The Gambler over at Pick Swap Media as well. Subscribe to the podcast there. Also doing some stuff over at DraftKings as well. He is our good friend Sean Barnard. Buddy, how you doing, my man?
Yeah, honored to be back on. Appreciate you having me, Jeff. A little disappointed in the winding down of the NBA season, but we got a little bit more juice around here with some draft talk to get into as well. So I'm hanging in there. I'm making the most of it, and it has been some really good hoops across this playoffs.
Absolutely. Look, we got to get into the Philadelphia 76ers this offseason. Now we know that they have the number 3 overall pick in the draft, Sean. And obviously, we can't wait to see what they do with that number 3 overall pick. You know, my co host and I this past week, we were talking about on our main podcast show about what should happen with the number 3 overall pick. And my co host, Len, actually said he wouldn't be surprised if Daryl Morey possibly trades the pick to acquire some new talent or future assets. I thought it was interesting today. There were some reports that came out that said, you know what, they're really looking at developing a young core, and that number 3 pick may stay and actually not be traded. So I kind of want to go through this with you here. Let's start first about what you are hoping the Sixers front office will do with this pick. Keep it or trade it. You know, what are your thoughts here, Sean?
Yeah, I'm very bullish on the idea that this Sixers team needs to walk away with one high-level rookie, one high-level player that they could view
Yeah.
as a potential piece of the future here. I do think that there is certainly truth to Daryl Morey will pick up his phone and answer whatever call to offers that come his way. And it is smokescreen season that I'm sure we'll hear a million rumors before the draft even gets here. There
Yeah.
is, I think, some potential to, like, the Utah Jazz been a team pointed out who hold that 5th pick if they want to move from 3 to 5, pick up a little extra in the process and something like that. I could be potentially open to that idea, but I do feel very strongly that this team does need to add a high impact rookie that could be a part of the long term core. I'm personally on the team Ace Bailey camp and will be perfectly comfortable sitting
Same
there
here.
at 3 and making that selection there. But
Yeah.
there's a lot to like. VJ Edgecombe has certainly built up some momentum in recent days and recent weeks there. So the draft kind of starts at the Sixers with that 3rd pick with Cooper Flag and Dylan Harper sort of penciled in for those 1st and 2nd here. Going to be very interesting to see what they do.
Ace Bale, I think that he could be that key component to this team in the future. I talked about that young core that we are looking to potentially have in the future. I think Ace could be that guy. And again, we just don't know where some of the veterans on this team are going to be. We don't know where Joel Embiid's health is going to be. We don't know where Paul George's health necessarily is going to be. I know we talked about those 2 gentlemen the last time you were on the show, but there's just so much uncertainty. You bring in Ace and the type of talent that he has, and you develop around him, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and you've got yourself a really cool and really spectacular young core moving forward, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, 100% there. And they're in a pretty unique spot as an organization as they do sort of have a chance to do this 2 timelines concept. That the foundation has been laid for sort of this next era of Sixers basketball with the guys you mentioned, with Tyrese
Yeah.
Maxey, with Jared McCain, Quentin Grimes, each being 24 years old or younger as a part of that picture. And this 3rd pick obviously fits that same build. Now, with all that being said, you still do have the veterans tied to the roster. And that's going to be the biggest question mark with things. I do feel strongly about bringing in a young talent to continue to sort of grow this pathway to long-term success there. But if this team is fully healthy, they're going to be right in this contending mix. And that's sort of what you're banking on here. So that's the biggest question mark, but they can kind of do both things, I feel, by making this draft pick.
Absolutely. Look, when we look at what this draft could mean for the Sixers as well, let's not forget that they have the 35th pick in this draft as well in the 2nd round, Sean. And the Sixers, you know, they've been known to draft some, you know, I would say productive talent in the 2nd round. You know, in recent years, Jeremy Grant, Shake Milton, they provided some depth for this team in the past. I'm wondering, is there talent that you're looking at in the 2nd round that could potentially help this team at some point down the road?
Yeah, there 100% is there. And I think the Sixers have had some fairly high success from both the undrafted market and 2nd round picks throughout the years. For all the criticisms of Daryl Morey, he's done a really nice job with the late round selections and undrafted guys that he has hit on. And what I think is like the beautiful part of that specific selection there, you sort of can see who are the fallers, who are the guys falling out of the 1st round and pounce from there. Ryan Kalkbrenner is a guy that I've seen mocked to the Sixers a lot, who obviously stuck around at Creighton for a while. I wouldn't mind taking another stab at addressing the backup center position with a position like that. I certainly am not in on it from the third pick perspective, but I could
Right.
be talking into it from 37. But I think my mindset from the Sixers would be let the pieces fall in front of you, see who the guys that fell that you didn't expect, and capitalize from there. That's so often we see GMs sort of outsmart themselves across all sports by making these unique picks here. And I think Daryl Morey has done a really nice job just sitting in there, keeping track of what his board looks like and taking the best available from there.
Absolutely. And, depending on how the draft and other offseason acquisitions look and how it goes for the Sixers, Sean, I look at this team as, and maybe it's just hopeful optimism here that they could be a competitive team in the 2025-2026 season. Then I go back to the old phrase, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And I feel like we've been fooled more than a few times by the 76ers. But then again, injuries continue to crop up for key people on this team, key personnel, I should say, on this team, and players that we need to be at a certain echelon in order for them to get to where we want them to go in the playoffs. So, in your opinion, how competitive could this team be with the right acquisitions next season? What are your thoughts here? Because I know you've talked about it a little bit here and there on the Gambler, and certainly, I know Pick Swap Media as well. What are your thoughts in terms of how competitive this team could be this year based on various acquisitions?
Yeah, I do think this team is going to be right back in the competitive mix next year and should be viewed as a contender in the Eastern Conference. And to start internally, just viewing the Sixers team, it obviously all hinges on the health of Joel Embiid. And that is the $1 million question that we
It's
will
like
not know the answer to.
every
Yes.
year, every year.
It sure is, and there certainly has been much to inspire confidence based on the past results that we do have. He obviously had another surgery this offseason, and I mean, it was crystal clear that he was not right from start to finish last year. So you do have to hope that returns to some extent, as this is all built around him. Paul George, I am confident that we get a resurgent season, and he probably will never be the max contract guy that we paid him to be, but he shot 20% on open three-pointers last year. That's just not Paul George. He also revealed today that he was playing through a torn abductor, so kind of
Yeah.
had a lot of things going on.
Yep.
And keep in mind, like the moving cross country, the fires near his house in LA, it was in everything that could go wrong, did go wrong for both Paul George individually and the Sixers team. Now, looking beyond the Sixers, I do think the Eastern Conference is as wide open as it will be next year. The Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum obviously suffering that Achilles injury, which is going to put him out for at the minimum most of the regular season. And even before that, there were some real deal conversations behind the scenes about all the moves that need to be made from a cap perspective and a tax perspective for what that organization is facing. A team like the Milwaukee Bucks, I think it is incredibly unlikely that Giannis Antetokounmpo ever plays another game in a Bucks uniform, and that's another legitimate contender in the East that is sort of knocked off there. There are the Knicks that are going to be around, the Pacers are going to be around, but there is not this like super team that you should be afraid of in the Eastern Conference. So the Sixers have to look at this as we have a chance to go for it and take every step that could be taken to get to that point.
Yeah. It makes me think too that if the Sixers front office tries to somehow package the number 3 pick to get a veteran star in here, of course, Kevin Durant, there are the rumors about that. I'm not a big fan of that at this point. We've kind of seen this time and time again with the Sixers team, the front office. Let's bring in vets. Let's see, whether it's James Harden, whether it back in the day, Jimmy Butler. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd love to have Jimmy back on this team. I absolutely would. But I just don't think having a KD around here is actually going to be very good or beneficial for this team and the direction of the team either, Sean.
Yeah, I would be against that game plan as well. And for me, how I look at it is I just feel like it's a further all-in push or bet on a gamble that they probably shouldn't still feel all that certain in taking. You've made your bet and have to sleep in it with the Joel Embiid situation and the
Yeah.
injury question marks that I'll continue to have here. By trading more to kind of bring in, and don't get me wrong, I'm not here to argue that Paul George is better than Kevin Durant. He is not, even at this stage of this career, but I just don't think it makes sense to kind of double down on that with the hopes that this can sort of come together. So I get the concept here, but I do feel very strongly that the best direction for the organization is make a pick at the third selection, or at least in those handful of top picks, to have a guy that could be a long-term piece rather than just a veteran at the end of his career.
Yeah, totally agree with you, buddy. Totally agree with you. Again, folks, We are talking to Sean Barnard from Fox Sports Phillies, The Gambler, Pick Swap Media. Also, you can check out, he's doing some great things over at DraftKings as well. Sean, I want to get into the NBA playoffs with you now. Enough Sixers talk. Let's get into the NBA playoffs right now. This Knicks-Pacers matchup is going to be stellar, in my opinion. I think it's going to go 7 games. How do you think this series is going to go? What are you going to be looking for in it, my man?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you that I do think this is a 7-game series, and it's kind of cool. We've seen obviously like sort of 4 new faces in the conference finals now, and that there is going
Yep.
to be another new champion. And I think this parity overall is good for the NBA, the amount of turnover that is there. But when looking at this specific matchup, it is going to be an interesting clash of styles. The Indiana Pacers are a team, they're going to roll very deep in their rotation. They're going to throw bodies at you, rotate through guys. It can be any given night where a guy is stepping up and having his 20-point outing, whether it is Andrew Nemhard or Benedict Mathurin or Aaron Naismith, or you can kind of go down the list of the guys that are capable of stepping up. And then when you contrast that to the New York Knicks, you know exactly what you're getting as far as
Right.
who's going to be on the floor. These guys are going to clock close to 48 minutes on an every night basis. With that said, I do think that this series is going to end up a bit of a war of attrition, that there's going to be a bit too much depth to this Pacers team. Depth to me is something I've overlooked from a playoff perspective, as you do kind of think of it as the rotation Titans. There isn't as many minutes to give around. But I think this year we're seeing the value of that, especially with the injuries that have popped up. So if there is one injury to this Knicks team, I don't feel great about their chances whatsoever. And I do think that there is a world where this playoff run starts to drain them a little bit. They went through
Yeah.
a very physical battle with Detroit in the opening round, had to deliver their best punch to take down the defending champion Celtics team. I do think the Pacers have life. They have the same momentum. So I will go Pacers in 7, but I do think it's going to be a straight up awesome series.
See, I'm thinking it's going to be the Knicks. I just do, and I don't know whether it's a gut feeling at the beginning of the season. I actually predicted it was going to be Sixers and Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, and I could see Jalen Brunson just putting the weight of the world on his shoulders, and at the end of the day, getting it done. He is that good of a basketball player, as you know. So I don't know. Well, we'll have to wait and see how this all turns out. But I want to turn our attention now to the Western Conference Finals, because we, of course, are going to see another interesting and stellar series between the T-Wolves and the Thunder. My gosh, this is going to be an incredible series as well. Again, I think this series goes 7 games here. How do you think this series is going to go, Sean?
Yeah, I've been a bit surprised that sort of the perception of the series seems to be that the Thunder are the heavy favorites when you look at the odds and all those kind of conversations. I think the series is up for grabs, and I
Yeah.
do think Minnesota has a very legitimate chance. I think Anthony Edwards versus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be about as electric of a matchup as you could hope for. And what I think is especially cool about this is I do think it will shake out where it's matching up with these two stars directly guarding each other. It's pretty rare that we see that in the NBA, as teams tend to have like their defensive specialists thrown on that guy. That both these star players are guys that do the dirty work, that buy in defensively and set the tone for their team here. I think ultimately that Oklahoma City probably has a bit too much depth, and their defense is at a level that I think Minnesota is going to struggle with, but expect some old school 80s style scores in this. I think there'll be some 89 to 87 type
I
wins
love
or
it.
things like that. It's going to be fun. So yeah, I think it'll be a defensive minded approach. I do lean Thunder, but I do think the Timberwolves absolutely have a chance to pull it off.
Absolutely. All right. And before I let you go, buddy, I got to get the prediction from you in terms of who you think is going to win the NBA Finals, what that matchup may look like, and who's going to end up holding that trophy at the end of this NBA season. Who do you think that's going to be?
Yeah, I think it comes out of the West, and I do think the Thunder have paid their dues, and it is their time to ultimately get that victory here. So
Yep.
I do lean towards either one of these Western Conference teams coming out of it, having the inside path or expected to win the overall NBA championship there. Do think the Thunder will end up being that team. Not to discount the East, the Pacers, and the Knicks by any extent there. They've had incredibly successful seasons and certainly will at least win a handful of games. I think it'll be a battle come that time, but I do think the Thunder is overall the answer, the rightful favorites, and I think they get the job done this year.
Absolutely. Dude, I'm so glad the Thunder did not get the Sixers pick. I mean,
Yes.
seriously, we didn't mention it at the top with the number 3 pick talk that we had, but how fantastic is how that they didn't get that pick? Because if they had gotten that pick, my God, they'd be set for like the next 25 years.
Yeah, and they basically already are when you look at how much they
Yes.
still have there. It's incredible the amount of draft capital they hold. But yeah, thank goodness that the basketball gods gave the Sixers a little bit of a kickback with that 3 pick there, a little bit of a hope to this franchise here in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Again, he is Sean Barnard from Fox Sports Phillies, The Gambler, Pick Swap Media, DraftKings as well. Sean, where can everybody find you on the social media platforms platforms out there? I know you're all over the place, buddy. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, best way to follow me on X is at Sean_Barnard1. You can also check out on Instagram. PickSwapMedia1 is a great source for a bunch of the clips that I kind of have popping out. The Fox Sports The Gambler handles as well, over on TikTok and YouTube as well. So pretty much everywhere, but at Sean_Barnard1 on Twitter is kind of where I tend to loop in everything.
Buddy, thanks so much for joining us here on our Table Talk interview show this week. Come back and join us down the road. Love to have you.
Absolutely. Anytime. Appreciate you having me again, Jeff.